if everybody could be seated, I want to start the final panel for the day. And I'm Scott, and I'm going to talk about cross-cultural variation in AI attitudes and religion, okay? And this is a different topic than I usually talk about. I usually talk about all these clinical trials of dialogue tests that I do, so for those of you who are hoping for this, I'm going to disappoint you. And I'm going to talk about religion and AI. Okay, there are major cultural differences in the acceptance of AI. And what do I mean by this? Okay, like Jensen Huang is a rock star. China makes AI education mandatory. South Korea, regular curriculum in AI. And we compare this with New York City that has banned AI, and Italy that has banned AI, and Australia that has banned AI. Okay, so there's large regional variation in attitudes about the use of the AI. Japan, China, South Korea, Taiwan. AI is seen as transformative, and this is in contrast with Western countries where it's largely interpreted more cautiously. And we can combine this with Asian tendencies to attribute mental capacities to robots and humanity to creatures that deviate from the human-animal form. So, like manga characters that have cats' heads are judged to be people rather than monsters or animals. Okay, so the explanations for this difference, it's very widely documented in the research literature, typically focus on why Asians are more accepting of AI and robots. Okay, but I want to talk today about what factors in Western culture inhibit the acceptance of AI and robots. So try and come at it from the other side. And I want to talk about the Christian roots of this difference. And I'm going to use the Facebook of a prominent conservative Christian pastor to illustrate my point. And this is my point, that some kinds of social activities are, this is what he's going to say. Some kinds of social activities are mediated through God, and AI interferes with this relationship. And then the dark future that this kind of dysfunctional relationship is leading us to. So, okay, I'm going to talk about Chris Wiley. Chris is a prominent Christian pastor. He's a conservative Christian nationalist. He's MAGA, if you know what that is. He's a supporter of Donald Trump. Although he's not particularly enthusiastic about Donald Trump, but he will vote for him rather than the Democrats. Okay, Chris says he was raised as a Scientologist, that his mother was a liberal drug addict, so he's an adult convert to Christianity. He says that he made a lot of money building houses, and that he expresses a very strong working class identity. That's what Chris says. Okay, you might have never heard of Chris as a prominent Christian pastor. The Christian pastors that you've heard of in the United States are typically pastors in mega churches, and they follow kind of gospel called prosperity gospel. And this is Paula White. She is the pastor to Donald Trump in the White House. You can see she has 3.4 million followers. And Chris, in this Facebook account that I'm going to talk about, he has, 11,000. Okay, so 11,000, 3 million. Wait, why am I going to talk about Chris? Okay, why is Chris important? His writing is widely circulated among homeschooling families, Christian educators, pastors seeking to recover biblical modes of authority. He's a faculty member at New St. Andrews College in Idaho, and has graduated thousands of pastors and church officials. He speaks widely at conservative evangelical events and classes for conservative Christians. Okay, and ChatGPT has summarized this for me, that these activities collectively underscore Chris's significant role in shaping contemporary conservative Christian thought. Okay, so the data I'm going to talk about. It's going to come primarily from posts and comments on that Facebook account that I posted about. He's got other Facebook accounts and blogs and podcasts and books and things like that, but I'm going to talk about a YouTube account which is very interesting, but I'm going to talk about that Facebook account. And that account was started in January 2017, and the research I'm going to talk about here begins in November 2022 with the release of ChatGPT 3.5. So I'm going to give a brief description of the 30 months since then, and that's relevant to AI. Okay, and just some notes here about the anonymity of the sample. The APA, the American Psychological Association, does not require that I keep the identity anonymous for public comments such as those on Facebook, and it even gives a citation method for doing this. And I think that's fine with Chris. He's a public figure, and in fact, I'm pretty sure he will think it's pretty good that I'm talking about him here. Many of the people posting on his Facebook are also pastors or professors at various types of schools, and so they're public figures too. But some of the people posting on his Facebook, especially in comments, they're private citizens and they're not public figures, and I think they're expecting some kind of privacy when they're posting on his Facebook, even though I think that's kind of ridiculous because it's a public Facebook account. But I'm going to conceal their names and identities, and if you see something that's concealed and you're particularly interested in it, I'll provide more information about who wrote that. But, okay, the analysis I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give some quantitative description of his account, but mostly I'm going to focus on manifest content, and I'm going to talk about intuitive topics. And what I mean by that is sort of the stuff that struck me he was writing about when I read it. And the reason I'm doing this is that his posts are all over the place. If you're my friend on Facebook, he posts a lot like I do. He posts all the time, sometimes 20 times a day, sometimes 1 or 2 sentences. He might post an essay. He'll post photographs of pages from books that he's reading with comments. He's like me in that respect. Okay, and so the result of this is that many posts have no comments at all, and some posts might have hundreds of comments. And this has more to do with things like the time of day that he posts rather than the topic. And in fact, he might post the same topic 2 or 3 times to elicit comments, because the first time he posted it, he didn't get any response. Okay, so anyway, I don't believe, those of you who work with me know that I was trained in quantitative methods and measurement, but I don't believe a formal content analysis would reveal anything more meaningful than my intuitive understanding of the manifest content. So, okay. Okay, but this is the quantitative data that I went through, and I counted the number of times he posted about AI, beginning with the release of ChatGPT in November 2022. And his first post appeared the very next month, but that kind of conceals the fact that it really wasn't very important. Following the release of ChatGPT, there were many months where there were no AI posts at all. And the big change in his posting frequency began in July and August of 2024. So just a few months ago, less than a year ago. Well, what happened in July that changed all this? Okay, he posted about this book, Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Nearer, when we merge with AI. And in July, he posted about that 4 times. Okay. So Ray Kurzweil, if you don't know who he is, he's a pioneer in computer science and in AI. He's one of the first figures important in developing the optical character reader. And the Singularity is Nearer. This is a follow-up book to the 2005 book, The Singularity is Near. Okay, and the description from Wikipedia is that humans will transcend the limitations of our biological bodies and brains. These attributes in the limit are generally used to describe God. Okay, so this is how Wikipedia describes Kurzweil's books. That human evolution is moving towards a conception of God through AI. Okay, and Kurzweil talks about in 2029 we're going to reach AGI. And in 2045, we will reach singularity, where through combination with AI, we will achieve this godlike power, transcending our evolution and the universe. Okay, this is called transhumanism. And this is a term that is attributed to Julian Huxley in 1957, although in fact it was around for a lot longer than that term, that since then, but that's when you'll frequently see it described as originating. Okay, And what Huxley meant at that time was the positive meaning of transcending human limitations with machines. And the way Huxley describes it, it's more like, you know, if you're my age, there was a TV show, The $6 Million Man. That's more how Huxley was using the term transhumanism. Okay, now I want to point out that before Creswell's, before Chris reviewed Creswell's book, he had mentioned the idea of transhumanism. If we go back to 2022, that was the first time I've seen him talking about transhumanism, where he's talking about Hannah. It's one of those. Nigel, it's German.
Arendt.
Arendt? Okay, Hannah Arendt. Yeah, but he's talking about the book Totalitarianism, which is basically about the Third Reich. And Chris comments that the Nazis were not nationalists, they were transhumanists. Now, I have never seen this anywhere. I read a lot about the Third Reich and the National Socialist Party, and I have never seen anybody describe them this way. This is Chris. But my point is 2 years before he read Creswell's book, he was talking about this, but it just didn't seem very important to him then. Okay, now the thing is, when I started reading Chris's comments, Chris's posts and comments, the first framework that popped into my mind was this idea of these four intuitive themes that came up. Okay, the unique nature of humanity, AI is God, and AI makes you stupid, cognitive decline, and use of AI in the church. But the more I read about what he was of his posts, the more I realized that's not what he's talking about. He's using these as examples of something greater or different, I guess. Now, there are many comments in his posts from people who are following him that discuss these points, and they're not making the deeper point that Chris is making. But Chris's point is that these are just examples of another issue. And that issue, okay, Chris, and there are other pastors who talk about this, their concern is different. And they're talking about the way in which AI interferes with God's mediation of human activity, with the spiritual experience of God's creation, and with his divinity. The activities created by God to experience his divinity, and AI can and does interfere with this. Okay, and Chris, I'll show you later, he talks about how this opens the door to dark, nameless forces. Okay. So, okay, now so I'm reading along with Chris. I've been on his Facebook for a couple of years for other reasons. I wasn't watching for AI, and he started posting more and more about AI, and I took notice of this because we talk about this. But it wasn't until about December 3rd that I really noticed that he was talking about something really different. Okay, so here on December 3rd, we have this post where he talks about population collapse and AI concurrent with robotics. Okay, there's a chemistry to the mix of those that makes for wildly different scenarios. And you're wondering what could Chris be talking about this? AI, robotics, population collapse? Okay. I hope you can see this. But here is a page from Ethan Mollick, Co-Intelligence. And Chris has these points outlined. And he's talking about how a lot of work is time-consuming by design. Okay, in a world where AI gives an instant, pretty good, near-universal accessibility shortcut, we'll soon face a crisis of meaning in creative work of all kinds. But you have to keep in mind, when Chris sees these words, by design, his first thoughts are going to be, whose design? Okay, he doesn't think it's OpenAI's design or your boss's design. He's got another idea about this. Okay, and you see Chris's comment up at the top that when it comes to the existential threats of AI, it's this sort of threat that gets over the atrophying of human skills is already happening. But what he's talking about here is the threat to this design. Okay, that work should not be this way. That AI, that Nigel is telling us we can use AI to handle. Okay, and it's a little bit difficult using Chris's AI writing to explain this, but I think the best example comes from a link that Chris provided to Tim Madden. And Tim is the pastor at Cornerstone Baptist Church in Pennsylvania. And Tim wrote a blog entry about AI and the dead, and what he's talking about here is this idea of using, if you have a dear one who's departed, and you can use AI, talk to AI, help you overcome your grief. So Tim is giving a biblical warning against a digital resurrection. Okay, it's a false comfort in the danger of living in the past. Here's how Tim puts it. So even if these AI-generated conversations ease the pain of losing someone, they might ultimately hinder the grieving process. Okay? Grief is a natural, though painful, part of human life. Through grief, God invites you to lean into Him and mourn the loss and heal. Okay, so it's not just the feeling better that's important. The point is that grief allows you to experience God more closely and become nearer to Him. And AI is distorting this relationship between you and God, mediated through the grief. Okay, now there was an earlier post. This made me realize what this earlier post, or this earlier comment from a small business owner on Chris's Facebook account was getting at. Okay, now in this, what this man is referring to when he says they is AI. So I'm going to read this, paraphrasing it, rephrasing all the pronouns so that it's more clear. Okay, so when you don't believe that mankind is God's special creation, you exalt yourself as God. It's only natural. AI wants to pretend to do what God can, create life, since AI cannot do what God does, thus proving that AI isn't actually ontologically the same as God. They are left to resign themselves to the same plan as Satan and war against mankind itself, because it is the constant pressing reminder that God is God and AI is not. Okay? This is a very powerful statement. Actually, this is really hard to read because of the way he punctuated the sentences. Okay, and then this takes me back to a post on December 28th, where he's talking about Max Tegmark, Life 3.0, where he says, this means that even in the near term, long before any AGI can match us at all tasks, AI might have a dramatic impact on how we view our life. Now, why is Chris pointing this out? Because over here, he in January 14th, he posts, the longer I study AI, the less concerned I am about it becoming conscious, and the more troubled I am concerning the theological and eschatological implications of AI. What he means here is where AI is taking us. What's the final goal of AI? And if it's never conscious, is there really any danger if this never happens? Okay. So you see the Chris and Tim, and they're talking about AI interfering in our God's our experience of God's divinity. Well, if AI never becomes conscious and is never able to control that, does it really matter? Well, Chris goes on to make this point. Okay, so again, from Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, Chris writes, this is one reason why I think AI will attempt to take a measure of possession of our bodies. We would give it the experience it craves. Okay, so here, and then I just want to flash back to his original post that sparked my attention in his writing about AI, that population collapse and AI, there's a chemistry to the mix of those that makes for wildly different scenarios. Okay, so what's Chris talking about here? He's talking about how there's a problem with the problem with technology is that it might interfere, but this is all technology, not just AI. But the problem with technology is that it might interfere with our ability to properly perform work and the activities that God intends for people to experience His divinity. Okay. But AI has a special risk. Even if it does not become conscious, it may start taking possession of human bodies for whatever purpose. And Chris speculates that it might be to get access to experiences that it can't get because it's a machine. And perhaps its final goal is to replace people during population decline. Okay, now, how much time do I have?
13.
Okay, so here. Okay, now, all of this makes me recall the 1905 work by the economist Max Weber, where he talks about the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, in which he writes, now this is edited from ChatGPT, that Protestant values created an environment encouraging the early adaptation of technology. So my point is that Chris is writing in a tradition that's about 150 years old here. Okay? Now, having introduced you to the point about Max Weber, I want to leave you with this question here. Is this a Protestant version of the earlier beliefs that Weber suggested affected the acquisition of technology? Okay? And are we seeing an AI version of religious attitudes shaping how we view technology and work? Okay? Now, having said that, when I finished all this, I had some afterthoughts about this. Okay, now, what Chris is talking about here is a concept, Jamie's gone home, but he's talking about dominion, and this is a pastoral concept. That humanity is God-given authority and responsibility to rule over and steward creation. It has to do with sort of a hierarchy of life on Earth. So up at the top, there are men, there are humans, and particularly men, and it is our duty to steward creation. And this reflects the divine order, care, and purpose. And it is often Genesis chapter 1, verse 28 is often cited as why we are commanded to do this. But in fact, in Chris's and others writing about AI, there's a much more frequently cited story from the Bible, and that is this one from Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 to 9. And this tells the story about 200 years after the great flood had subsided, and the descendants of Noah are spreading out across the world. And at that time, the whole world had one language and a common speech. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. And the Lord said, "If one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Okay? Come, let us go down and continue and confuse their language so that they will not understand each other." Then the Lord confused the language of the whole world and scattered them across the face of the earth. Okay? Now, if you believe, like Chris and Tim and most of the people on their Facebook accounts, that this is an actual record of an event that happened on Earth, and you're reading this, and you're watching us talk about ChatGPT and how ChatGPT is going to create this communal world of this global world of communication, doesn't that story sound familiar? So if anybody has any questions about this.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Scott. So it struck me that I, as a literature person, basically presented a quantitative study, whereas you, a quantitative person, are basically presenting a literature study. And just as how you pointed out that there were significant limitations to my approach, I also noted that perhaps in the future you might consider trying to better foreground the narrative that you've perceived instead of presenting like this conspiracy corkboard directly to us, so as to better draw out the point that you perceived in your evidence. But that's not my question. My question is, why are you doing so much reading about the Third Reich?
He's been doing it for years, CJ.
Up on American News, do you?
The answer to that question is in fact how I know Chris. Okay, and I call him Chris because I'm a regular contributor to the comments on his Facebook. I don't know if he recognizes my name because there's thousands of people there and hundreds of people leave comments, but I regularly talk to him. And the reason I talk to him is the answer to that question. And it's a personal question, and it'll take me a while to answer. It's the sort of thing that's better done socially. It's not private. It just is. It's weird. Okay, a lot of things in my life are weird, and the answer to that is weird. Okay. Yeah.
You might just want to stop there, is what he's saying.
Yeah. Okay. Is that a question, John?
Just a comment, because something you said really connected with something you mentioned about the bringing people back to life. What was it? The
Digital resurrection.
Digital resurrection. Thank you. I just the other day, I don't know if anybody had seen it. There was a trial, a conviction of a man who had killed someone in a road rage incident, and the sister of the man who was killed used AI to digitally recreate her brother, who gave a victim impact statement.
I did see that.
And that was like, I saw that and I said, wow, and it was very well done, I mean, as far as AI goes, but it just to really connect with what you're talking about, because apparently everybody in the court was very affected by it, the judge in particular. And she used it to forgive too.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Just brought it up. Yeah.
I'm just curious, what kind of data did she use to push?
I don't know what technological platform she used, but I believe she wrote the statement herself.
You've kind of created clones of yourself,
Unless maybe
right?
she put in stuff about her. I really don't know.
Because I thought about doing something like that with my father's works,
Yeah.
and like putting it into AI and have certain conversations.
Like all your, social media posts for the last 2 years, Facebook posts, all of your.
Because you can
Scott's
create
done.
a data persona.
Yeah,
So-
Scott's
I
done.
imagine, yeah.
Scott's done.
Which
You've created like a persona of yourself online,
I've created all
right?
these fake people. I've created fake.
I created fake people. Oh, the profile that I. Oh
Yes.
yeah, I had ChatGPT because I've been posting on like chats and personal questions and stuff with ChatGPT for 2.5 years now. So I asked it to create a profile of me, and this is another weird thing I did with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I created a scale. How much you are like me, and what kind of questions would ChatGPT ask to determine how like me I am, how like me you could be. Based on my profile of my chats with it.
You're about 22%, Scott Sommers.
First, I found your title intriguing because I wanted to know why Scott was talking about God and AI in the same context. But I also find it interesting that if you look at the New York Times, which I read regularly but not religiously, they're talking right now about spirituality and the connection to God and how this seems to be this always happens when we have new technology. Okay, this technology is always going to interfere with the way things were in the past. But I'm wondering if you see the situation going to get worse because of this massive turn that has become much more deeply religious, almost going back to the 1980s.
Yeah, I saw that article in the New York Times, and I read it. If you go to Reddit, there's a deeper discussion of the people that are involved in the case studies that are described in that New York Times article. Apparently, the man who's the key case study there has severe manic depression. He has mental health problems, and that's the reason that's explained why he became involved in that AI cult. I'm not, this idea of the cult and brainwashing and people being sucked into cults. I'm not a big believer that there's like some psychological tendency to that. Like some people are prone to this and some people aren't, and some people join those kinds of organizations for support, and some people go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and some people go to the Reformed Presbyterian Church where Chris is a pastor. So.
But do you think right now, at least in American culture, that this move towards so-called spirituality is going to conflict with AI, where we get into a big debate then with what Nigel was talking about, what business wants and what the people want, and there's going to be this big conflict that's going to happen because we're going to start to empathize more with Chris and we're not care so much about Bill Gates and all those other people.
Okay, I have a way of describing the United States economy that things that would be normally done as very private matters get done for profit in the United States. So this idea of a prosperity gospel, like that you run a church for profit, like this, it should be illegal, but in fact it's a respectable business in the United States. But it's not just that. There are other things that would be in every other country in the world, as far as I know, are treated as very private, personal matters that in the United States are marketed and sold through registered companies. And I can give you examples, but some of them will be a little embarrassing for me to talk about right now. But they're a little bit shocking for me. And so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
You think it's gonna get worse?
worse, better. This is like you and talking about success. I don't know what these words mean. I think there's going to be a lot of panic.
Okay, that's worse.
Yeah. Okay. There's going to be a lot of panic. There already is a lot of panic about AI. And Chris and Tim and those guys, they're you know now that they're kind of abandoning Donald Trump because they were never particularly enamored by him. They just supported him in lieu of supporting the Democrats, who they think are disgusting people. But now that they're back away from Donald Trump, they're raving about AI and the evils of AI. They're going crazy about it. That's going to be a big topic for them. But in fact, when I read a lot of their stuff, I wonder almost if it's not kind of like a conservative niche. Like they're going to be the Christian AI people in the conservative pundit world, and that's what they're trying to position themselves as. That's really how I see Chris, because I've been reading his Facebook for years, and suddenly he's onto AI. But AI's been around for years, and you know, Creswell wrote that book in 2005, and there's been lots of books around, and we've been talking about AI for years, and suddenly Chris is on it. And there's it's not just Chris. There's a whole bunch of conservative Christian pastors writing about AI now. It suddenly became, if you could position yourself as that kind of guy, it became a good way to. Well, Chris is writing a book, How to Be a Conservative Christian and Survive AI.
There's a lot of money to be made in satanic panics. Okay, so I grew up in the '80s with Bob Larson. Okay, and who was it after that? Who was it after that? There's money to be made in satanic panics. Okay.
Sure, absolutely. There's money to be made in panic. Yeah. Okay. And I guess I'm out of time now, right? Okay. So ring the bell. Oh, my time's up.
There we go.